Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's class, which is the Winsor Newton Oh Snap by Gingerbread Man. My name is Tim DePack, and I'm from Winsor Newton, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm being joined by Mandy Peltier, who will be your artist instructor for today's class. And Mandy will be taking through today's class by providing you some information about the products being used and showing you how to perform some of her favorite watercolor painting techniques, all while creating these delicious gingerbread men using the Winsor Newton Cotman Watercolor Sketcher Box set. She'll also give you a sneak peek of her upcoming class in January of 2022. There's a sketch outline that was provided prior to the class, and we can put that in the chat for you on the side there in case you have not got that. There's the link. And upon completion of the class, there will be a survey being sent to you in your email. We ask that you please fill this out and let us know what you think about the class, and let us know if there's anything that you'd like to see Mandy performing these classes in the future. As Felicia said earlier, the class replay will be available 24 hours on Michaels.com or Michaels YouTube channel. And please feel free to follow along and paint with Mandy or sit back, relax, and enjoy the free class. And I'm going to pass over to Mandy.
Thank you, Tim. Hi, everyone. Like Tim said, I'm Mandy Peltier, and we have 1 hour today, and I think we'll use the whole hour for this project. So I'm going to go ahead and share my other camera so we can get started. Okay, so this is the project we're painting today. Oh, snap. I said in my last class, I love this saying. I love witty sayings. I bought my husband a shirt that had this saying a few years ago. I crack up every time I hear it, as you may have seen my face when Felicia said it at the very beginning. So we just have a few supplies today that I want to make sure you have on hand for the class. So a glass of water. I'm using the Skechers Pocket Set as per usual. I have an artist palette. This holds 7 colors. We're going to be mixing 5 paint colors and 2 washes. So my 7 will palette is perfect for this project. I am using the Winsor & Newton professional paper, and the pad looks like this. It's a 9x12 size, but I trimmed it to be 8x10 for this project. I'm also going to be using art masking fluid for this project, and I'll explain what this is. I've used it in some of my previous classes, and the toothpick is to apply the masking fluid. And I also have a heat gun because we only have an hour today, and a couple of the steps we may need to speed along the drying time. That's a hard word to say, so that we can move on to the next step. And then the pair of scissors is only if you haven't already transferred your outline prior to class. Same with the graphite pencil and eraser. Paper towel for blotting. I use paper towels a lot when I paint with watercolor. And I'm using 2 brushes today, a number 4 round and a number 6 round. These are the Cotman here. You may notice I have 3 brushes on my screen, however, and 2 of them are number 4s. And I'm going to explain why I have 2 number 4s. You don't need 2 number 4s. I just want to give you like a tip today. All right. So we're going to start by drawing or transferring the outline. So when you signed up for this class, you were given 2 outlines to download. The typical outline that are provided with all of my classes. And then this one that said, please print before class. So just like with my moose class last month, I thought it would be a little bit easier and quicker to draw the gingerbread men, if we were to cut out and use this as like a stencil, because gingerbread men are symmetrical and it can be hard to draw things symmetrically quickly. So this will just sort of help us along. So I'm going to put this one aside for now, but if you've already transferred it, you can just watch and hang out, go get a drink. So I'm going to use my pair of scissors, and I'm going to carefully cut around my gingerbread man. And I'm actually going to cut real broadly around the entire gingerbread man. So that'll be a little bit easier for me to work around all the curves without losing control here. And then I'm just going to carefully start cutting around. And I'm just using really cheap printer paper. If you're going to be watching this after the fact, not live, and you happen to have cardstock laying around, it might be a little easier to trace around if you print this out on cardstock. But just standard cheap printer paper works also, obviously, because that's what I'm using. And I believe that's what I used last month for the moose as well. All right. So we're going to start by drawing the gingerbread man that is fully intact and hasn't lost part of his leg. And then we will draw the other gingerbread man using the same stencil. It's almost done here. And this is a fairly quick project to paint, if you can believe it. It doesn't take too long. And we'll
And do you
try to
think people at home could use like a cookie cutter? Probably the same thing if they have a gingerbread man. I guess.
Yes. And, I'd actually thought about putting that on the supply list, but I figured we'd all have different shapes. They are all very different. If you look at gingerbread cookie cutters, they all are a little bit different. So that's why I didn't go that route. But yeah, you could totally do that. Use that as your stencil. All right. So I'm going to put my scissors aside and I'm going to use my pencil here. All right, so I am going to pull over my regular outline right now because you guys know I like to work from the outline when I'm drawing the outline. All right, so I'm going to just sort of line the stencil up on the paper approximately where I see it on the actual outline. And I'm going to stabilize it with my non-dominant hand and then trace around it with my dominant hand. And I'll just sort of reposition my fingers or my hand as I need to sort of trace around this gingerbread man. You can even rotate the paper if you need to. You guys know I'm notorious for that. You turn as much as you need to maintain control and to help you work from a good angle. There is nothing wrong with that. All right, so we're going to draw the outlines of the gingerbread men, both of them, and then we'll go in and put in all those little decorative elements on each cookie. The buttons and the eyes and the eyebrow, all that good stuff. Tim was thinking everyone's going to be hankering for a gingerbread cookie after this class. And I think I might be. I may have to make some gingerbread cookies pretty soon. I haven't started any holiday baking yet, but 'tis the season, so I might do that. All right, so I have the first one drawn here. So how I'm going to draw the broken one is I'm going to take my pair of scissors and I am going to cut a squiggly line on the bottom right leg. And it doesn't have to be exactly where it is on this one. You could even cut off half the gingerbread man if you wanted. You could do whatever you wanted, but I'm going to cut off the lower right leg. So I'm just going to go in sort of a squiggle shape along the bottom of his leg, like so. And then you don't want to lose the bottom of the leg. Just sort of set this aside in a safe place. And then I'm going to line this up where I see it approximately on the outline. And then I'll go ahead and trace around this one. So that is why we started with the intact one first, because we cut off part of the outline for the broken gingerbread man. But I hope you can see how much quicker this is doing it this way versus trying to freehand draw it. We'd be here the whole hour trying to get it perfect, or at least if you're like me, I can be a bit of a perfectionist. And fun fact, I've never liked anything I've painted or drawn. Literally, I'm so nitpicky about my art. But that's all right. I've learned to accept that about myself. All right. I'm going to take the big one off here, and now I can take that little leg that I set aside so I won't lose it. And then I can just sort of set this down. I don't like to do it so that it is perfectly lined up with the gingerbread man. I like to kind of twist it and turn it a little bit so it kind of looks like it's fallen down. So I just twisted it a little bit underneath. I think this is the hardest one to trace around because it's so little. All right, there we go.
I feel so bad for that gingerbread man. He looks
and
so
he looks
sad.
so sad, doesn't he? He looks so sad.
But he's going to look so yummy in a couple minutes.
He
So.
will. We'll put him out of his misery. All right. So now I'm going to do the lettering, oh snap. And I'm just going to sort of eyeball and write it here. So just try to follow my outline as placement. And you can use my lettering example. You can use your own handwriting. You can use a different font. Make this your own. And then we have snap. And we're going to paint on the lettering today, but of course you can write it on if you would rather. There is nothing wrong with that. It's a little bit faster. All right, so there we go. There's our outline. so. And oh, we have to do the decorative elements though. Oh my word, I almost forgot. That would have been funny. Okay, so I am going to draw on all the buttons for the gingerbread man. I'm going to start with the middle button because I can just center that one right in the middle of each gingerbread man. So I'll start with the center button and then I'll do the one above and below it. This just kind of helps make sure it's centered on the gingerbread cookies. So I'll do that to both. The good news is, other than the eyebrows and the mouth, the gingerbread designs are the same on each cookie. So it's just the expression that is different. Now for these little squiggles on the arms and legs, I'm just going to do a single line because we're going to be covering them with masking fluid and that will thicken it up and have it be the right width. So I'm just going to draw a little squiggle line on each arm and leg. And this will just save us a little bit of time today than trying to draw it exactly how it is on the outline. I promise it'll thicken up when we apply the masking fluid. And then for the eyes, we're going to do circles. I think for the smile, I will also just do one line since we'll be covering that with masking fluid. Same with the eyebrows. I'll just do a single line just to sort of save us time. So the eyebrows on the smiling gingerbread man are an arch. And for the one who sadly lost part of his leg, they're just straight angles or straight lines. So it just kind of helps with his shocked expression to do straight lines versus curves. And then the mouth is just a little different. The top is an arch and then the bottom is a straight line. All right. And actually, I think I want to fix that a little bit. His mouth is a little bit too close to his eyeballs. All right. And so now we are going to apply the masking fluid. So I'm going to set a few things aside. I feel like my workspace right now is a little tight and I keep pushing things aside. So I'm going to move what I don't need out of the way for a second here. Okay, so masking fluid, what it does is it's sort of like a rubber cement where it even kind of smells a little bit like it. It dries really quick and you can just peel it off. And what it does is it protects the paper from receiving paint where you apply it. So wherever we apply this masking fluid or art masking fluid, the paper will be protected and it won't receive any paint on those areas. So I have made these gingerbread cookie men without using masking fluid. I've made them with masking fluid. It'll just make it a little bit easier for us to paint on the actual dough portion of the cookies if we mask off the buttons and the swirls and the eyes and the eyebrows with masking fluid than if we try to work around each of those little elements. So I'm going to just give a quick shake to my art masking fluid bottle. I'm going to open up the cap. And I like to work from the cap, not from the bottle, but you can do whatever works for you. So I am going to pour a little bit of masking fluid into the cap. And then I'm going to set this aside in a safe place where I will not knock it over because I have done that before and it makes a big mess. So I'm going to work from the cap here. And I have a toothpick and I reuse my toothpicks. I have a couple laying at the top of my drafting table that I just pull from when I use masking fluid. And you can see this tip of the toothpick has dried masking fluid on it. I find this a little easier to use the toothpicks if you already have a little buildup of masking fluid dried on the toothpick itself. So on this end where there's no masking fluid, I'm going to start by just sort of dabbing it up and down into the masking fluid to try and get a bit of a base going. And then let's see here. When I'm ready, I am just going to use it like a brush and I'm just going to paint on each element with the masking fluid. So I'm going to go over the eyebrows. I'm going to fill in the circles for the eye and the buttons. And I'm going to use sort of a circular motion as I cover the eyes and the buttons to sort of apply this masking fluid. And we're just going to go over each little section here. And like I said, the masking fluid does dry fairly fast. So you'll want to work quickly enough on each section that you can get the coverage. Because if it starts to dry before you're done in a given section, you will actually pull it up as you try and apply more. I don't think we'll have that issue today, but just in general, know that. It will start to lift if you're still trying to apply masking fluid and part of it has dried.
Just going to let everybody know that Winsor Newton actually makes, there's 3 different types of masking fluid. So Mandy's using the regular masking fluid. There's also a colorless masking fluid, and then there's a permanent masking fluid. So what she's doing here, you're going to want to do the one that's not permanent. And she's also doing the one that's just a regular masking fluid. As you can see, it's like a opaque off-white. And that's so it's visually for you to see where it is when you want to pull it off. Because if you use colorless, you might not realize that it's there.
Yeah, I have never used the permanent or the colorless. This is the only kind of masking fluid I use because it's very easy to pull up. And like Tim said, I can see it. It dries a little bit different color than this, but you can see it. And you'll see when we're done. If you haven't used masking fluid before, if this is your first go around with this stuff, it's fun to take off. I don't know if when you were a kid, if you ever put like rubber cement on your hands, let it dry, and then you peel it up. It was like the early sensory toy for my generation. I can remember kids in school doing that all the time. I'm not suggesting you do that with a masking fluid, but just reminds me of that as you peel it up. All right. Sort of like what the maple tree seeds, how you used to like fly them and sort of like an early sensory toy too, before it became a big business. Sorry, I'm a special needs mom, so this is like my life right here, sensory toys. All right, so I'm working on the buttons on the broken gingerbread man. And you'll see once you have that little base of masking fluid on your toothpick, it's a lot easier to apply. Building up that base can take a little bit though. But I would encourage you to just keep this toothpick. Don't throw it away. I know a toothpick can be really easy to lose, but you know, if you can put it in a place where it'll be easy to remember where you put it, you can just reuse this, and then you'll already have that base built up on the toothpick for when you use the masking fluid again. And then I'm going to pour the art masking fluid back from the cap into my bottle and close it up. Set it aside so I don't knock it over. And then while this is starting to dry, we are going to mix our red and our green, and we'll paint on our lettering, and then we'll mix the rest of our colors. So that will allow the masking fluid to start to dry, and then our lettering can start to dry while we paint our other colors. So I'm going to set this aside for now, and I'm going to pull down my artist palette, my water, my Sketchers pocket box. Okay, so the reason why I had 2 number 4 brushes. So it doesn't matter what type of brush you buy, even if you buy the most professional brushes, then it'll last forever. And so you can see this number 4 brush, the ends are sort of tucked under or folded under, and it's a little bit wider. It's not as new looking as this one. So I don't throw my brushes away even when they get old like this. I just use my older brushes to mix my paint colors because I really dig it into the half pan, and it sort of changes the entirety of the brushes. And so, yeah, there's no reason to throw them away. Just use your old brushes to mix your colors. So with my old number 4 brush, I'm going to stick my brush in the water, give it a swoosh, help those bristles absorb the water. And to mix the red and the green, I'm going to place 3 scoops of water into 2 different wells in my palette. So I'm going to use my brush as if it were a spoon and place 1 scoop, 2 scoops, 3 scoops. And I'm going to do that to 2 wells in my palette. And we'll start with our red. So our red paint color, we're just going to use Alizarin Crimson. Alizarin Crimson is the only red that's in this set. So I want these to be really pigmented, really concentrated. So I'm going to probably do 7 passes of red into this well in my palette. And when I say a pass, I'm going to take my wet brush. I'm going to really dig it into that red half pan a handful of times. And I'm going to stir it into the well in my palette, wipe it on the edges, and that's 1 pass. I'm going to repeat this 6 more times to get a really nice pigmented red. So here's 3 for me. And you can see it doesn't have to be a slow thing. I just really kind of dig it in there, stir it, wipe, and repeat. So we'll use this red on the lettering, and then we'll also use it on the buttons on the gingerbread cookies. So there's our red. Now for the green, we have 2 greens in our set. We have Viridian hue and we have sap green. Funny enough, neither of them are really a Christmassy green, but when you mix both of them in equal parts, it gives us a really nice Christmas shade of green. So I'm going to do probably 3 passes of each. I might end up doing 4 passes of each. So equal amounts of Viridian hue and sap green. I'll start with Viridian hue, but I'll start with 3 passes of Viridian hue. And then I'll do 3 passes of sap green, and I'm not even going to clean my brush. when I switch from one of those half pans to the next, because they're both greens. You can see as you sort of stir your brush into the paint, it really kind of takes on that Christmas green. All right, so I think I'm going to end up doing 4 of each just to make sure it's pigmented enough. All right, so we have our red and our green. These are opposites on the color wheel. We're going to use them together to create a gray, because opposites on the color wheel sort of cancel each other out and give you a neutral color. But they're also complementary because they're opposites on the color wheel. All right, so I'm going to pull this back down. I'm going to switch to my nicer, newer number 4. I'm going to swish that in the water since I haven't used my nicer one yet. And we're going to paint on the lettering. So let me pull back over the finished piece here so we can have a side-by-side comparison. All right, so the way I did it, and I have to give Tim props, this was his idea. We are going to paint the O a different color than we paint the snap. So I'm going to paint the word O with green, snap with red, and I'm going to do the exclamation with green just to give a little more variety. So you can paint these a couple different ways. This is another example of where our downstrokes are going to be thicker than our upstrokes. So you can paint it where you just apply the same thickness all the way around the letter, and then you go back with another layer on the downstrokes to make it thicker. Or you can just press a little firmer with your brush as you do the downstrokes and then lift a little as you do the upstrokes. So either way is fine. I'll show you both. On the O, I'll show you the first way, where you can try and carefully just do the same thickness all the way around. And when I'm painting letters, I don't really paint them as if I were writing them. I sort of just switch my angle, whatever I need to do to kind of maintain control. Okay, so here's how it looks when it's all the same thickness. And then I can go in with another layer on the downstrokes. So the downstrokes are where your pencil would be moving in a downward motion if you were writing the letters. So that's one way you can do it. Or you can just do it the way I think most professionals do it, where you're just going to press down a little bit more firmly as you go down. And then on the other strokes, you'll just press pretty light. So it's a thinner stroke. So I'll probably do it this way for snap, where I just press a little bit more firm with my brush as I do my downstrokes. And then I sort of lift up on my pressure and angle for my upstrokes. All right, so I'm going to clean my brush, because if I have green on my brush, when I switch to the red, I'm going to de-intensify that red and darken it a little bit. And I don't want to do that. So do make sure your brush is clean before you put it into the red paint. And I'm going to start my S for snap. And I'm going to press a little bit firm as I go down that S and then lift towards the bottom. And then try to keep the rest of that S fairly thin. It would be a lot harder to get these nice, clean, thin lines if I were using my worn down number 4. So that is another reason why I keep my clean, good, nice, newer brushes for actually painting. And I try to use my older ones for mixing, because then I'm able to get the thin lines that I'm often telling you guys to render when we're working on different projects, and that we will use today. So. All right, almost done here. So every time my brush is going down, I just press a little bit harder with my brush, but you can also do it the way I showed you with the O, where if it helps you maintain control, you can just do the same thickness to the whole letter and then another second layer to thicken the strokes. And then, I almost did red for the exclamation point and I caught myself. So once again, I'm cleaning my brush. I don't want to add any red to the green, or I'm going to darken that green. And that won't be as Christmassy. I'm going to just dot the bottom of the exclamation point to create the circle. And then I think to create it so it's a little wider at top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my brush, not completely straight up and down, but just at a slight angle. And I'm going to start real thin, and then I'm going to press with my brush to make it thicker towards the top. Just like that. Clean my brush. And then I can set this aside to kind of let this dry while we mix our other colors. And then the masking fluid can finish drying as well. I can tell mine is still just a little wet, but it should be dry by the time we are ready to start painting the gingerbread men. Okay, so I would like to start by mixing up our 2 washes. So our 2 washes, we're going to make a blue colored wash. It's kind of a turquoisey wash, and then a gray wash. So I'm going to place 3 scoops of water into 2 more wells on my palette. So 1 scoop, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. And in my classes, I always say a pass. And we're going to still do a pass, but it might be more like a half of a pass or 3/4 of a pass. And because I want this to be a lot more water than paint. So I'm going to use the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to use the Viridian hue. Now the Viridian hue we've already used. So that top layer of this half pan is already wet and it's going to be easy to reactivate. The blue, not as much because we haven't used it yet. So just keep that in mind. I am going to do a full pass of the blue, but only like a half a pass of the green because it's already wet and it's going to be easy to pull the color. So I hope that makes sense, my thinking there. So with my brush, I'm going to just run my brush over the blue for a couple seconds. I'm going to stir that into the water. Actually, I probably just need to add a little bit more there. Okay, but then for the green, I'm just going to literally just for a split second run it in, because as you can see, it pulls the green readily since it was already a little bit wet. But this is creating our bright blue. It's almost like an ocean blue, almost like a turquoisey blue. So that's how we're creating the blue wash. And we're going to be using this on all the white decorative elements on the gingerbread men just to create a little bit of a shadow. Same thing with the gray. The gray is also going to be used on the decorative elements. So I had mentioned that we are going to mix we're going to mix red and green together, opposites on the color wheel. So I'm going to do a half a pass of the alizarin crimson and a half a pass of the Viridian hue. Hopefully they'll cancel each other out and give us a gray. So for the same amount of time for both. So I'm just going to do a couple seconds into the red, stir it, a couple seconds into the green. That wasn't even a couple seconds, like a split second. All right, and then you can just do another small swipe if you need to of each color to get it to be gray. But just know we just want this to be a gray color, but a wash. We don't want to make it as pigmented as our green and our red. So hold this up so you can see. So you can see they're very watery compared to the blue, or I cannot say my colors today. These washes are very watery as opposed to the green and red paint mixtures. And you can see this as I sort of tilt them back and forth. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and mix our 3 browns that we're going to use on the gingerbread men. So we're going to place 3 more scoops of water into the last 3 wells on our palette. And I would not even worry about cleaning your brush in between colors as we mix these browns, because we're kind of going to go from the lightest brown to the darkest brown. So the very first one we're going to mix is just burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is really going to be the color of our gingerbread bin. I am going to do 6 passes of burnt sienna into the first well of our browns, but 5th well total. It's 4. I shouldn't count because I'm going to confuse you guys. I'm just trying to keep myself on track. And I will probably have to mix burnt sienna. As I was practicing for this class, I had to every time. So you may have to as well. But the good news is it's just burnt sienna. That's the only color. So the next brown, you can just go ahead and stir your brush into the next well on your palette. And I'm going to add to it 5 passes of burnt umber, which is the dark brown in your set. I'm only doing 5 passes because I don't want this to be super, super pigmented or dark, or it will really overpower the burnt sienna. So just do 5 passes or so of the burnt umber. And then you can just run your brush into the next well on your palette. And I'm going to add to that 3 passes of burnt umber. So that same color. 3 passes. And then we're going to add into that 2 passes of the ultramarine blue, because we're going to turn this a really dark brown, and the blue added to the brown will really darken it. If you keep adding blue to it, you'll eventually get black. That's one way. That's the best way to mix black with a Skechers pocket set, is to mix ultramarine blue and burnt umber together. All right, and I think I might even need just a touch more blue there. All right, that's good. All right, so we should have 2 washes, a gray wash, a blue wash, and then 3 browns, and then we still have our red and our green that we'll use just a little bit on our buttons. All right, so I can bring back over my piece here. I am going to run my heat gun just for a second over the masking fluid, just to make sure it's fully dry. It looks like there's still a couple stubborn spots where I placed a bit more masking fluid, i.e. the buttons. So I just want to make sure that's dry before I put paint over it. I'll pull this back over. Okay, so we are going to start by applying burnt sienna. And I have done this in some of my other classes where we will apply a color to a singular section, and then we'll place the brush in the water for a second, wipe it along the edge of the palette, and then paint on a diluted version of it. We're going to use that technique today a lot. So let me verbally tell you what we're going to do so you can better keep up with me when we actually do it. We're going to start on the head, and we're going to start on the fully intact gingerbread man here. I'm going to take the burnt sienna. I'm going to paint it on along the left side of the head, the right side of the head, under each eyebrow, under each eye, and around the mouth. Okay, so that's going to receive pure burnt sienna, all of those sections. And I'm going to place my brush in the water for just a second, wipe it along the edge of my palette, and then I'm going to add the diluted version of burnt sienna to the rest of the head. And we're going to repeat that process to various components or aspects of the gingerbread man. So you can see in the finished one how the sides of the head are darker, underneath all the elements is darker, the edging is darker, and that's because we're going to be using this technique repeatedly today. So I'm going to put some burnt sienna on my brush. I'm going to apply it along the left edge of the head, the right side of the head. I'm going to go under each eyebrow, under the eye, both eyes. I'm going to go around the mouth. And that masking fluid is protecting those sections. And then I'm going to place my brush in the water for just a second, wipe it along the edge of my palette, and then I'll have a diluted version of burnt sienna that I can apply to the rest of the head. So this won't totally erase where we applied a pure version of burnt sienna. It'll just kind of help get some values going for us, some lighter values, some darker values. We're going to repeat this process. And I should say too, my brush stroke today is for the most part going to be a very vertical one. I'm going to try and follow just the direction of the gingerbread man so we can kind of create texture. So for the most part, unless I'm working on a corner or a turn, I'm mostly using a vertical stroke as I apply, and it's almost like a scrubbing stroke. Okay, so we're going to work on the left arm now. I'm going to apply burnt sienna along the bottom of the arm and around this curvy line, and then we'll dilute the rest of the arm. All right, so I'm going to apply it to the bottom of the arm and around that curvy element. I'm going to go ahead and do it to the right arm too. Let's go ahead and apply it to the bottom of the right arm and to the curvy element. And then brush in the water for a second, wipe, and I'm going to use that diluted version of burnt sienna to paint on. And you can just place your brush in the water again if you need to further add water to your brush. And I'm going to finish painting on both the left and the right arm. And I accidentally smeared some paint already today. That didn't take me long. So I'm just taking a clean brush with water on it, and I'm running it over where I accidentally applied the water. And the sooner you do this, the more success you'll have in lifting it all. And I'm good. So that's how you can clean that up. All right, so for the middle of the gingerbread man, I am going to apply pure burnt sienna to the straight edges that are in between the arms and the legs. So the straight part that sort of sits in between the arms and the legs, and to the right of each button. So to the right of each button, I'm going to place that pure burnt sienna, and then I'm going to place my brush in the water, wipe it along the edge, and then I'll apply that diluted version to the rest of this middle section of the Gingerbread Man. And you can see we're already creating some texture. And just place more water on your brush if you need more water to finish the task. And then for the legs. All right, so for this left leg, and I'm going to blot my brush. I want that water off the brush so I don't dilute the pure burnt sienna in my palette. So I'm going to place the pure burnt sienna along the top of the leg, right down to the bottom. I'm going to place it all along the bottom of the leg, this kind of arch that is created there, that whole bottom arch. And then I'm going to apply it to both of the curvy elements on these legs. And then I'm going to apply the diluted version of burnt sienna to the rest of this cookie that still has the white of the paper showing. And then we'll be ready to do the exact same process to the other gingerbread man. So you can see we already have some texture going. We already have some values going with just that first initial layer. So to repeat what we did to this gingerbread man, I'm going to start once again with burnt sienna. I'm going to apply it to the left side of the head, to the right side of the head. I'm going to apply it under these eyebrows, under the eyes, all around the outside of the mouth. But because he has a different facial expression, I'm also going to apply it to the entire inside of the mouth. And then I can place my brush in the water for a second, wipe, 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 and apply the diluted version of burnt sienna to the rest of the head. And then we'll repeat what we did to the arms. I always blot before I put it back into the burnt sienna. I'm going to apply it to the bottom of each arm, the bottom of each arm, and to the curved designs or elements on the arms. And then brush and water, wipe, 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 and we'll apply the diluted version of burnt sienna to what's left of the arms. And then to the middle of the gingerbread man, burnt sienna to the straight sides that are in between the arms and the legs, to the right of each button. And then you can dilute and apply the diluted version. I'm going in a vertical motion as I apply the diluted burnt sienna to this section to help start create some texture. And I'm going to blot, brush back into burnt sienna. I am almost out of burnt sienna. Oh my word. I went through it fast. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit more here. All right. So we're going to apply burnt sienna on the far left leg along the top of it. And then I'm going to apply it along the whole bottom of the legs, including that arch. And then I will go ahead and apply it along that bottom edge where the cookie's broken on the leg. And around each swirly design. And then you can dilute and apply that diluted version to the rest of this section. And then we'll tackle the broken part here too. So to the broken leg, I am going to apply pure burnt sienna along that top broken edge, the top broken edge, and along that left side going down to the bottom. And then diluted version or water to the rest. And that is part one. So part two is going to be pretty similar to this with a variation or a twist. So we're going to use the middle brown, that second brown we mix, which is just the burnt umber. And we're going to apply burnt umber to the exact same sections where we applied the pure version of the burnt sienna. But we're going to do something a little bit different. So with the burnt sienna, we diluted it with water and we applied it to everything that was left, right? But with the burnt umber, it's going to be more of a loose stroke where we're not going to try and cover everything. It's even going to be partially like a dry brush technique. Like I could not think of what it was called. So you've heard of dry brushing. We've used it before in my classes, where your brush has so little water on your brush that you're really just sort of creating texture. We're going to do sort of a partial dry brush technique. We are going to blot our brush and then just sort of wipe on the burnt umber just to create a little bit of texture. So I'll show you what I mean here. So clean my brush, blot it, and put some of that brown on my brush. And I'm going to apply it to the same spots on the head that I applied burnt sienna to. So I'm going to apply it to that left side of the head, to the right side of the head, underneath the eyebrows, underneath the eyes, and around the mouth. All right, so then here's what's different. I am going to place it in the water for just a second. I'm going to wipe it a few times. I'm going to blot it a couple times. And then I'm just going to kind of place wide strokes. You may need to add a little bit more water to your brush. Just wide strokes of this diluted version to the head to create a little bit of texture. I am not trying to cover everything. I just want to create a little more texture with this by kind of doing wide vertical strokes with it. And I'm going to do the same thing to the arms. I'll just do one arm to start. So I'm going to apply the pure brown to the bottom of the arm, just like we did with the burnt sienna. I'm going to go around the swirly design with it also. Place my brush in the water, wipe it. You can even blot it a couple times. And then I'm just going to do wide strokes to the arm, not trying to cover everything, just trying to create some texture. And then to the right arm along the bottom. And if it's going on too dark, you may need to stick it in the water for more than a second. So a second is working okay for me. But if it's going on too dark, if it's turning your gingerbread man into looking like he's been overbaked, you may want to keep it in the water for another second or two. We're just going for sort of a partial dry brush technique. And you see the texture. We still want to see some of that burnt sienna peeking through from the last section. To the middle section, burnt umber to the same places we applied burnt sienna. So these straight edges of the gingerbread man to the right of each button. And then brush in the water, wipe, you can blot a couple times if you need, and then wide vertical strokes. Wide vertical strokes to the bodice. Look at that texture. Makes it look like dough, I think, which is why we're doing it. All right, so I'm going to apply the burnt umber to the top of the lower left leg, along the entire bottom of both legs, including the arch in between the legs, to the swirly designs. And then we'll use that partial dry brush technique. I don't know if that's what it should be called, but that's what we're going to call it today. All right. And then we'll be ready to do the same thing to the broken gingerbread man. Look at that. Pretty cool. It might take some practice not to cover everything. I know it's our inclination, not to leave any negative space peeking through. So it may take some practice. If you don't get it today, don't give up. Just keep trying. All right, so for the broken gingerbread man, I'm going to apply that brown to the left side of the head, to the right side of the head, underneath the eyebrows, underneath the eyes, around the mouth, to the inside of the mouth, and then we're going to use that partial dry brush technique to the head. I can't wait to see these when we're done. All right, so to the arms, the lower part of each arm, and to the swirly design. So you guys will get a bit of a break from me. I don't have a class for 4 weeks, but I will be starting off the new year for Winsor Newton with a class on January 4th. I'll show you what that is at the end of our class time together. All right, so for the middle part of the gingerbread man, those straight lines that make up the edges of the gingerbread man, the right of each button, place your brush in the water, wipe, 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 blot on your paper towel once or twice, and then add some texture. Can you hear the scrubbing at home? You can hear because my brush isn't completely wet as I apply that color. All right, so for the legs, I'm going to apply it towards the top of the left leg, along the entire bottom of the left leg, and then down to that broken leg and across the bottom of the broken leg. And then to the swirly designs. And then brush in water, blot, scrub. And then for the broken piece, I am going to apply that brown along the top edge, along the left edge, and then once again, dry brush technique. All right, and one other thing I want to do, the broken gingerbread man, the main part of the gingerbread man, I want to put a little bit more brown on my brush. And so we have the very base where it breaks off. I want to go about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch above that and paint on a parallel squiggly line to the broken wavy line for the cookies. So I'm going to kind of paint on a wavy line about 1/16 of an inch above. So it creates what looks like a break where it tears. And I'm going to use my brush. I'm just going to dot on some little dots and lines right below that swirly line I just painted on to make it kind of like crumbs. See if I get a little bit closer. There we go. And then we can clean our brush. And we're going to switch to the number 6. You're probably wondering, where's the number 6? Well, we're going to use the number 6 now. We're going to use burnt sienna for this. So if you need to mix more burnt sienna, now's the time to do it. I need to quickly mix up some more here. So we're almost done with the gingerbread cookie part. This is the last thing we're going to do, and it's super quick because I'm going to use the number 6 brush to create a little bit thicker, wider strokes to each gingerbread man. So it's going to be pretty much the same thing we did with the brown. I'm just going to take my number 6 and I'm just going to be putting it into the burnt sienna and just sort of using a vertical wide loose stroke to kind of brighten up the gingerbread men and make them more of that orangey brown color. So I'm going to place my number 6 in the water, switch it around since I haven't used it yet, blot it a couple times. All right, so I'm going to put some of that burnt sienna on my brush, and I'm going to sort of start on the middle of the gingerbread man and work my way out. But I'm going to keep a loose wrist, and I'm just going to sort of apply a real loose stroke over the entire gingerbread man. I'm not trying to cover everything per se because I want to keep the texture going. And just brighten it up. So you can see how much brighter that is than this one because we kind of went over it with burnt sienna. You can always add a little bit more in certain sections, like through the middle. You can add a little bit more to the side of the head. I mean, whatever you want to do, but we just want to apply it to add a little bit more texture. And we're going to do the same thing to the broken gingerbread man. He's down, but not out. All right. Same thing to the broken leg. And you can always apply a little bit more through the middle or to a certain spot if you want. Oh, I just love these gingerbread men. They're so fun to paint. All right. So now this is where we're going to use the heat gun. We need to dry this layer so that we can remove the masking fluid and paint on the buttons and eyes so that we can be done. All right, so I'm going to take my heat gun, turn it on. I'm just going to dry these for about a minute or so. If they're not dry, then we're going to smear as we pull off the masking fluid. So, I mean, ideally let these organically dry because the paper or the paint does shift a little bit as it soaks into the paper. And we're sort of forcing that process by drying it. But, you know, we don't have time to wait. So we're just going to take matters into our own hands. speed
Mandy,
things along.
if one was not to have the hair dryer or your dryer you're using, how long do you think they should wait for this to dry, roughly?
Good question. I bet it would be dry within 15 minutes if you were to wait. Okay, I think that's probably good. All right, so I actually have a clean piece of paper towel here because this paper towel is wet, so I don't want to remove it with a wet paper towel. And so I'm just going to take my paper towel and I'm just gonna, you can use your fingers too. I just don't like to use my fingers because there might be some natural oils or dirt on them, but you can totally use your fingers. And I'm just scrubbing at it. You see how it just comes right off and reveals the paper because that masking fluid has protected the paper. And I'm going to do the same thing to this guy over here. All right. And then we're going to switch back to our number 4 brush for the rest of our gingerbread guys. Okay, wipe it off. I will have to sweep my studio later. I have so many little bits of masking fluid on the floor now. All right. So we'll start with the buttons. So with your number 4 brush, we are going to paint the buttons just like we see on the finished project. So on this left gingerbread man, the top and bottom buttons will be green, but on the broken gingerbread man, the middle button will be green. So you can maybe see in my finished example, there's just a touch of negative space on each button. Try to leave just a touch of negative space on each button because that adds interest and serves as like a highlight. So you basically just will try and leave a little bit where you don't actually cover it with the brush. And then, so we'll start with the green one. So we'll first paint on an initial layer of green to the button, trying to leave just a touch of negative space. And then what we'll do is with the green still on our brush, I'm going to run my brush just a couple of times and over my burnt umber half pan. And then I will paint that on along the right side of the button because the green will mix with the brown and it will darken the green. And then if we need to, we can drop on a touch more green to the left of the button if we need to. So I'll show you what I mean here. Wet my brush here, blot it. Take some green on my brush. I'm going to carefully add green to this button. I'm just going to leave like a touch of negative space. And then with the green still on my brush, I'm going to run it into the burnt umber a couple of times and add that to the right side to add a bit of a shadow. And then if you want, you can always drop in a bit more green to brighten it up. But this is how we're painting every single button. So I will talk us through it on the bottom one here. I'm going to start by painting green onto the bottom button. I'm going to skip over just a small section on the left side to serve as negative space, as a highlight, if you will. And I'm going to run my brush over the burnt umber half pan a couple of times, drop that in along the right side. Hold that up so you can see. And then we'll do the same thing to the middle button on the broken gingerbread man. So green to the button, but I'm going to try and leave just a touch of negative space if possible. And then brush over the burnt umber half pan, drop that on along the right. And the second button I didn't feel like I needed any more green, but the first button and this button, I feel like dropping on a little bit more green does us some good. And then we will repeat the same thing to the red buttons, only we'll use red instead of green, but we're still going to run our brush into the burnt umber half pan. So the process is exactly the same, only we're going to use red instead of green. So all the buttons that are left, so the middle button of the left gingerbread man, the top and bottom of the right gingerbread man will receive red. Still leave a touch of negative space if you can. Brush over the burnt umber, drop that in on the right side. And if you need to, you can drop more red onto it, but that one looks good to me, so I'm not going to. All right, and then top and bottom buttons. I feel like this one needs more red. It's so funny how each one a little bit different. All right, and then last button for me anyway. If you're not quite done, just remember this is the same process for all of them. So you can finish after the class is over. There we go. And those are the buttons. And then for the decorative elements, they are really easy. We're going to start by using the blue wash. And I'm going to use the very, very tip of my number 4 brush, and I'm going to outline the outer edges of each decorative element that's white. So it's okay if you twist to help you maintain control, but I'm going to try and leave some of the white of the paper showing. So I'm just going to try and do the outer edges with the blue wash. And if some of the elements are so thin that it's hard for you to do the whole outer edges, just do half. We just want a little bit of white from the paper still peeking through, because it will really complement the white that's peeking through on the buttons. And it will allow these decorative elements to still look white. That's part of the reason why we're using a wash to do the shadows versus a pure paint color. We still want them to look white. We just want to add a little bit of a shadow. So at the very least, do half, but if your strokes are thin enough, you can go all the way around and just leave the middle, the white of the paper. But this should be a very, very faint blue. If it's dark, just add more water to your paint to make it more of a wash. And then we'll just have some final little touch-ups to do. So it looks like we are going to run a couple minutes over. Not much. So if you do have to go, I hope you can watch the replay and catch what you have to miss when it's uploaded to the Michael's Store YouTube channel tomorrow. All right, and then the gray wash is just to add a little bit of accent, a little bit more color to these white decorative elements. So I really just add the gray really sporadically to all of the decorative elements, maybe just to half of where I applied the blue. So maybe just along like the bottom edge of each eye, just like the bottom edges of the eyebrow. Really, I kind of just apply them to like the bottom edges just to kind of help ground them in a bit more. Just add a little bit more color. You could also, instead of gray, make a purple wash and a blue wash work really nicely together. So that's another thing you could do. I just went with gray, but purple also looks really cool. Works really nicely with the blue. And some of my blue wash is not quite dry yet. So the purple, or not the purple, the gray wash is just going to bleed right into it. But so ideally you might wait for the blue wash to dry before you go over it with some gray wash, but time is of the essence today. So we'll just keep rolling along. All right. So you can see how that just creates some nice shadows on the white icing elements. And now really it's just time for final adjustments. That is what the dark brown is for, but you can also continue to use the sienna and the brown. Like this bothers me here. This dried a little rough looking, so I can always take some more burnt sienna and just sort of run it over to sort of smooth that out and darken up the edges of the legs. So that's one thing, you know, you could do. Now you do have to watch out for the decorative elements at this point because they're not covered with masking fluid anymore. And I like to use the dark brown to just sort of set down the eyebrows and the eyes and the smile and some of the decorative elements. So I'll use the very tip of my number 4 brush and I'll just carefully go under the eyebrows, under the eye, under the mouth. And this just sort of sets that decorative element into the gingerbread man. I'll apply that dark brown to the right of each button, and that really sets it into the cookie. And then I might apply it just sporadically around the edges of the decorative elements, the swirlies, the curved designs on the arms and legs. This would be another one that you may want to wait for the the washes you applied to dry before you do this step. You might get some seepage if you don't wait. I guess it just depends on how much was on your brush. I'm just using that dark brown to just sort of, like I said, set things into the cookie, ground them a bit. And then I'm going to do one more thing to the broken aspects of the cookies. I'm going to use the dark brown, and that second curvy line we painted on that's parallel to the bottom of that cookie, I'm going to apply a thin line of that dark brown to both, and maybe a couple more spots and lines in between. And then I'll also apply it to the top of the broken portion that's broken off from the main cookie. Just kind of help ground it. And there you have it. And then you can continue to make adjustments, but boy, I just think this is a really fun project. So I promised I was going to show you my next class. So I'm going to show you that while you finish up, and then I'm going to ask you to hold up your painting if you were able to keep up with me. But January 4th, same time, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be showing you how to paint these stacked rocks with the lettering Find Balance on it. It's easier than it may look, and it's a fun project. So I hope you'll be here for that. It's not yet available for signups, but it will be soon. So just keep checking the Michael's website. You can also check my website. I keep it up to date with my upcoming classes with links on where you can sign up. So you can also go to my website, mandypeltier.com, or you can follow me on social media. I'm Mandy Peltier Artist, like everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So you can follow me that way also. Okay, so I really want to see your gingerbread men. If you were able to create along with me, I would love for you to hold up your cookies. Let me switch to gallery view so I can see. Oh, these look cute. I love it. Oh, someone did 3. That's very nice. I can't believe you're able to do 3 in the hour. That's impressive. These are great. Good job, everyone. I'd love for you to send me a picture or tag me so I can see it bigger. I mean, these are like 2-inch thumbnails. So from what I can see, they look amazing. But if you want to email me or tag me on social media, I would love to see them bigger. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful December, and that your life, it will be truly blessed this month. And I can't wait to see you in the new year.